All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's Vantage Community Webcast. Before I hand you off to Maureen Dresner for the presentation itself, just a few things I need to cover. First, if you have questions along the way, and we always hope that you do, please use the questions box right under the GoToWebinar control panel along the right-hand side of your screen. Maureen does have a lot of content to get through today, so we might not have a lot of time for questions, but anything that you submit there, I will capture. I'll make sure she gets everything she needs to follow up with you after. Second, we are recording the session. That's why your lines are all muted. The replay will be available probably later today or tomorrow morning out in the Vantage community. So you can look for it out there. So if you have someone you want to share it with, or if you want to review some or all of it again, it'll be out there for you to see. And the last thing for me is that we want to make sure these sessions are as valuable as possible for you. So with that in mind, I pulled together a survey that's going to pop up at the end of the webcast. If you could stick around for an extra minute or so and give us some feedback, I know I would appreciate it, and I'm sure Maureen would as well. That's it for me, so take it away, Maureen.
Okay, thanks, Len. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining this session on the Vantage web client installation process. It's going to be from start to finish. So hopefully this will help you when you go and install it, just get you prepared to have a successful installation of it. You probably read this, so I won't go through it, but let me first go through the agenda. I'll go through the architectural overview of it. Then we'll go through preparing for the installation, so things to know and things to do before you actually start installing the web client. Then I'll do a live demo, and we'll just go through the installation process and then start it up. And then lastly, post-installation activities, just to make sure you do things afterwards to make sure that the web client is started up at IPL time. So things, sometimes we always forget about those last things, the post installation. So the architectural overview. So this picture depicts a simple 2 sysplexes. Of course, you have as many as you want or have with multiple LPARs. And so each LPAR that you want Vantage to scan information, you have the Vantage started task. Another name that we distribute it as is the SAMS procedure. So it's on all the LPARs, as you can see, LPAR A, B, C, LPAR 1, 2, 3, and then at the bottom of LPAR 3 in Sysplex South, you can see that there's the Vantage started task as well as another started task called Van Web UI. So if you're familiar with Vantage, or if you're new to Vantage as well, we have 3 different clients. The original client was a 3270 client. The other one was the Windows client. The Windows client installed on your PC and then connected to the Vantage system. We've found from users that nowadays you don't have security to write to the program files directory or even to your C drive, so you just don't have the access. So we invented and created the web client browser. So basically it's a browser instance. You just bring up a browser from any PC location, VPN in, or if you're in network, just add the application URL and you'll get the Vantage logon page. So what's really nice about the Van Web UI client is you only need one instance, one started task of it within all your sysplexes. So as long as within all your different sysplexes you have TCP/IP access, you only need one Van Web UI started task running. If you have a isolated system, LPAR, you could probably have another Van Web UI started task, because the database that's installed with the Van Web UI is a Tomcat server database, and you cannot share the databases between different systems. So as you can see, there's you have your PC, you bring up a browser, and then there's the logon page. And you add a port up here at the top. This is a TCP/IP port. And as long as you have the access between all your different LPARs, the TCP/IP access, you should be able to connect to all your Vantage systems. So just to reiterate, you only need one single instance of the Van Web UI. It is a Tomcat server. So it's a starter task that runs on ZOS, but it actually runs in the Unix system services. We supply the Van Web UI procedure in the Vantage CCTU library, sample library. So all you need to do is copy that member to your procedure library and change the things that you need to do, add the directories and a job card or run it as a procedure, whatever you need to do at your site. And because it's a Tomcat server, you need two TCP/IP ports, one for inbound traffic and the other for outbound traffic. So by default, it's supplied with the ports 8080 as the connector and the 8005 as the shutdown. Typically, those are already taken up or they're not allowed in your systems. You can try to use those, that's fine. But what I recommend is going to your network person, asking for two ports for the Van Web UI, reserve them in your TCP/IP profile so they're set for the Van Web UI only. And then another thing you need to decide whether you're going to use HTTP as your protocol or HTTPS. So it's this HTTPS is the recommended way to secure the connection between the browser and the Tomcat server. So we do recommend that way. That's another thing you need to discuss with your security administrator to see how you need it set up. So that's another thing. So the ports and the HTTP protocol are things you're going to have to know when you're doing the installation. So just write those things down. Once you do have it started up, there's a couple of messages that you might want to look at the very first time you start it up to make sure the Tomcat server started as well as the web client application is started. So I've listed two DDs here, the STD ERR, the STD error DD. If you look for the info server startup in 12,559 milliseconds, that means the Tomcat server has successfully started. The STD out DD is for the Vantage web client application. So all you have to do is look for the web 0001I message that the client has startup completed. As I mentioned, there is a database that gets installed during the installation process. There's nothing you need to do. It's all within the installation shell script that is going to be run, and we'll go through that. We install we use the Tomcat Apache Derby database just to provide settings for when you're using the UI. It's automatically created, like I said, during the installation process. The database is stored in USS. And to the very first time you install the web client, you're going to have to initialize the database. So what we do is provide a profile ID. It's called APP, and that actually initializes it. And you're going to use that same ID to log into the database to add the first Vantage host definition. So in the settings, when you're logged on with the APP ID profile, you can add your company logo for some of the reports. If you have the MOI product that does the analytical, Vantage sends metrics to MOI, so you'll have to add that information into the settings. And then we also allow you to create more than one profile. Sometimes when there's more than one storage administrator, each of you might want your own profile ID, so we allow you to create multiple ones. So the next most important part is the preparation for the installation. So the access and skills you need. Experience with OMBS is very important. If you haven't used OMBS, I do recommend either reading the IBM guide or actually trying to get into OMBS from your system and then just issuing PWD commands to find out your directory, your home information, your environment, how it's set up, creating a directory, deleting a directory, changing permissions. So if you can get familiar with just those commands, that will help you in the long run, just in case you need to use that. Because during the installation of the web client, it is all done in OMVS. Experience with Java applications is important. Really, it's just knowing where Java is, the actual mount point of Java, making sure that when you're in OMVS, you can access Java, and we'll go through that. With Tomcat applications, if there are errors, there are Java errors, and they're a little elaborate. So just you don't really have to understand all of it, but just knowing what a Java error is and how to debug that might help initially. But typically, you won't have any problems with Java errors. And then probably the more important is getting the authority to run the shell script within OMVS, to change permissions within the Vantage GMI directory, and making sure that all the procedures have the right security access. So if you do not have if you're not a security administrator or you don't have the access, then I do recommend partnering with your security person and asking them to help you, or you can ask them for the security, even if it's for a month or a time period that while you're installing the web client, you just need more authority than typically. So, and usually security administrators can give you for a certain time period, like for a month or for a couple weeks or whatever the case may be. So, and then make sure you decide before you start the installation process of whether you're going to configure it with HTTP protocol or HTTPS protocol. So that's probably also information you'll get from your security person because they'll need a certificate created for it. So unless you're the security person. And then lastly, there's a lot of information that I've mentioned that you probably need to have. So what we've done in the Vantage guide recently, a few months back, is given you a link to an Excel document. And I've shown it here right on just a cut of it. And so what we've done is put the parameter name, a description of it. The third column is the default value that we supply, and then the fourth column would be your value. So if you're not using the exact same values that we give you, we recommend putting it in column D. And then when it comes to doing the installation in OMVS, you just cut and paste from here, because sometimes, well, with OMVS, it has to be exact. So if a certain name or a certain directory has uppercase and lowercase, it has to be uppercase and lowercase. So that usually are a lot of the problems, just the case sensitiveness of OMVS. So if you have a document that you can always refer to that has the actual Tomcat ports, the security profile information, and the directories will help you in the long run. And then at the bottom down here, I've given you the actual link in the Vantage guide if you want to go find it. So the ZOS preparation, of course, you need to be on a supported release 2.2 or above is fine. We do require that you have Java version 8, so the 64-bit. You can find that in your SysOne ParmLib BPX member. If you can see them at all the different mounts, so just do a find for Java in there and then see what the mount point is. Grab that mount point for Java version 8 and then put it in your Excel document. Or you can also go into OMVS and issue the Java space dash version command, and that'll show that you do have Java available to you within OMVS. But you will need the actual Java path. So when you are in OMVS, you can go find Java that way and get the directory if you can maneuver through the different directories to find Java. But the easiest way I have found is just to go into your SysOne ParmLib and get it, because that's the way you know which one's mounted. And then the ability to set your TSO region size to 1024 megabytes. When you're running the shell script, it just needs a little bit more region, so that's why that's required. One way to find out is look at your TSO proc, and we'll go through that. And then in OMVS, we require that max file proc is at least 64,000. Typically it is nowadays that value, but sometimes on test systems it might not be. So I've listed the display command for OMVS options, and then you can take a look in your console log to see if that's set at least 64,000. And then lastly, just make sure you have update authority to put the Van Web UI procedure in your SysOne or Sys2 or Sys3 proc lib. So, and then the Sys, probably the ParmLib, the SysOne ParmLib, is to add the ZFS mount points in there later. So if you don't have access to that, make sure you give that to whoever does so they can add the mounts. So at IPL time, the Van Web UI task is started. Another thing you need to make sure, if you don't already have access to, is when you create the ZFS file systems, choose the high-level qualifier of the Vantage product. Then you can keep track of them. So that's what I recommend. If your high-level qualifier is Vantage dot whatever, I would use that same high-level qualifier just to keep them in an area where you know where they're at. So the SAM started task security. There's probably nothing you really need to do to update it, but because typically with 2.5, a lot of security profiles have changed, but if it hasn't been updated already, just verify that the profile that's assigned to the SAM started task has a home directory. If it doesn't, then you should ask for one. I do recommend using the Vantage GMI directory as the home directory. I didn't list that here, it's just a different one. So to find the home directory in your security profile for SAMs, it would be listed under the segment of OMVS. So as you can see, there's a home, the OMVS program, so it needs to point to the bin shell directory, and then the SAM started task also needs a user ID. Sometimes they give started tasks UID 0, which means super user. It's not required for SAMs to have super user. As you can see here, it's just a 4706 user ID. Then if SAMs does not already have the BPX facility classes for OMVS, I recommend getting these added, the BPX file attribute, the daemon, and the server. They only need to be read-only authority. And then you probably already have the EZB.stack access, so that's for TCP/IP. So that's probably already there, but just make sure. Um, Nowadays, I've noticed that when users do work with OMVS, there typically is an OMVS group already assigned at sites, so typically they already have this type of authority. So you just need to assign that group to the SAM started task. And then the Van Web UI started task. Because you already have the SAM's procedure started task security profile, I highly recommend using the same profile and assigning it to the Van Web UI started task. That'll allow you to not have to open up another ticket to get another security profile, and all the pertinent security is already there in SAMs. And so all you need to do maybe is a few more things. So to verify that what profile you are using for SAMs, I would go into browse this start a task and look for the IEF 695I message. So my procedure's name is Vantage, and the job name is Vantage, and it's assigned to my security profile of Vantage. And then my OMVS, my group is OMVS group. So these two, the ID and the group, need to be assigned to the Van Web UI. So that's all you have to do. And then just put all the certificate information in that same security profile. So as you can see, I listed here in the second screenshot in SDSF or SysView, the job name of Van Web UI, and the user ID is Vantage. And then my Vantage started task is called Vantage, and then the user ID is the same. So that's one way to make sure that they are the same. Vantage has a REST API, so I just changed that one to REST. But the easiest way is just to have one security ID. And then so when you're in OMVS, in the third screenshot, the directory shows that my directory here is called Vantage, but the group is OMVS group. So that's one way you can see if you're in the right group. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. So the directory is web UI, and then the user ID is Vantage, which correlates to this Vantage, and the OMVS group correlates to this OMVS group. And if you have any questions, or you can always look in the Vantage guide at establishing proper security environment. The certificate. Now, if you're going to use HTTPS, which is the recommended way, it's the secure connection between sending data between your web browser and the web server, you need to have your security person create the certificate and then assign it to the proper security ID, which would be the SAMS one, whatever SAMS is using. So HTTP runs on top of TCP/IP. It does the encryption protocol. We'll need to know that, which level you're at. We work with 1.2 and higher. One way to find out what your encryption protocol is if you have access on your PC to look at your internet properties. On the right side here, if you go to the advanced section, you can take a look and see which is checked. And as you can see here, I'm using TLS 1.2. So when you go to your advanced, you just scroll down to the bottom, then you'll see all your TLS availability. And then another thing we need to know is when you do use a certificate, where is it stored? So there's two places. So JCE RACF KS, and then JCE CCA RACF KS. Nowadays, it doesn't matter to us. We just need to know where it's stored. So the first one is stored just in SAF and RACF. The second one is used the same SAF and RACF, as well as the ICF facility, so the integrated catalog facility. And then lastly, we just need to prepare the ZFS file systems. So we give you a job in your CCTU sample library called Web ZFS M to allocate the 3 ZFS file systems. So it is a USS file structure, and all 3 of the file systems need to be 775. So 7 means you have read, write, and execute access. The 5 means just read and execute access. These are the directories. So these are our default names. The first directory is install, then there's the runtime and the web client directory. So that's where the database is logged. This log one, we put it in the install directory, and it just logs for the installation. We've already given you a specific amount of cylinders for each of them, so you don't need to change that. All you need to do is change, put it on a Valseer for non-SMS managed, or for SMS managed, add the storage class that you want to allocate it to. The only one that's really going to grow is the web client database, so plan for growth. Actually, I put the agri-grow feature in all 3 of the ZFS file systems, so they can grow. And that's it for the preparation. So now we're going to go through the installation of it. Here, I just wanted to let you know, if you haven't already seen it on the download center, the latest release is 14.1.2. This is the name of the PAX file. It's under graphical management interface, and this is it right down here. So you just choose how you want to download it. So let me bring up a 3270 session. And the first thing we'll do is check our TSO region size. So let me log in. And if you get this log on page, you might come too fast, so you might have to re-log on. But the region size is located right here. So just make sure this is more than 1024 megabytes. And mine is, so that's good. That's the first thing you need to check. Then let me log in. Then make sure you copy the web ZFS M JCL to allocate your ZFS file systems. So allocate those. Then you're going to add the procedure, the van web UI procedure, to the proc lib. And then after that, so you'll modify that. And then you'll download the PAX file, and then you'll download it to your PC. Then you'll have to upload it to the mainframe into USS. So just any FTP procedure will work for that. So assuming everything's okay, let's go just check to make sure your OMVS options are set correctly. So I'll go in here and I'll just display my options. Oops. Oh, went too far. So right here, let me see if I can make this so you can read it. So here's the display command, and max file proc is right here, and it is set at 64,000. So that's good. I've also seen where share lib, let me see, share lib size needed to be increased. So when you start the Van Web UI client, you might see other messages where some of the OMVF's options are not set properly, and usually it'll have a pretty good message that tells you what could be the problem. But these are the two main ones. Actually, this one. So, and then so one way to verify that your ZFS file systems are mounted is to go into iShell. It's a different way to go into OMBS. I think it's the easier way to find out if your file system's mounted or not. You can issue a command in the console log to do it, but I just like looking at it here. So I'm in iShell. Up at the top, there's file systems. So if you put your cursor there and click on it, press 1 for the mount table, and then do a locate for, I think, let's see, maybe mine aren't there. Locate. Let me see. Oh, here they are. So I'm not sure why my locate command didn't work, but actually I have two clients here. So this is the one we're going to use today. That's the database one. Let's see. Oh, and the other ones are share. And the other two, the runtime is right here and it's mounted. You can do an A next to these just to see what the mount point is, just for your own sanity. Copy that and make sure you use that as your mount point and do that for each one of the ZFS file systems. So I would copy that to my Excel document. And then let's see, so now I know that everything's mounted. Let me get out of here and go into OMBS. So I'll change into the directory where I'll change into the install directory where my PAX file is located. And if I just list out the directories, I do see the runtime directory and the install and the web client directory. And the one way to tell whether it is a directory is the first character here means directory. If there is no D there, it's just a file. And these are the permissions. So read, write, execute, read, write, execute, and read and execute. So these are all fine. So let me go into the install directory. And here's my PAX file. So one thing to check before you actually do anything is just check to see if you have Java access here. As I said, the shell script needs Java to run. And my system's a little slow. So when you issue the Java command, this is what should appear. So you can see if you're 64-bit and the version. So this is good. If you don't get this, if you get an error, then you don't have Java access. So that means you probably have to check out your profile file name in OMBS, but we'll get to that afterwards. So Java is available. for me. The next thing I probably want to do is check to see if the ports that I've reserved are still available. So you can issue the netstat command in OMVS if you have access. And so I'll look for the ports I'm wanting to use. So I'm looking for the two ports I have are 7008 and 7009. So as you can see, nothing's using it right now, and that's the way it should be. If there was someone using it, originally I think I was going to use 7001, and I found out someone else was using it, so I couldn't. So as you can see, CCIT program's using it. So that's one way to make sure your ports are available. So let's see. PWD will list out the directory you're in. So I'm in the installation directory. So now that I have verified everything's mounted, I got my ports, I know my security setup, I'm just going to unpack the PAX file. And these commands are in the documentation. I'm just typing them out. This might be a good thing to actually cut and paste too. So since the PAX name is right here, I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. And as you can see on the far bottom right, it says it's running. So that means it is unpaxing. Typically, it only takes a few seconds to unpack. So here's the PAX command, and these are the directories and paths that it unpacks. Let me see. It still says it's running. My system might be slow. Let me see. So it's still unpaxing. There we go. So when you see the word input on the far right, that means it's OMVS is done doing whatever it was doing. So let me just do another list. I think my system's slow. So although I don't see a DB tools file here. Let me try something. Okay, I'm not sure why my system's getting slow here, and I don't see all my files. So let me just try doing the executing the shell script. So once you've unpacked it, you need to run the shell script command to actually execute the installer. So the web client setup shell is this file right here. And to execute it, you just need the // Okay, and then so what happens is a series of panels will appear where you'll need to actually cut and paste the information. So the first thing that appears is the agreement, the license agreement. So we put you in a browse or edit session, and then you can page down through this, or you can just PF3 out of it. And then at the bottom here, it tells you or asks you if you want to agree to it or not. If you don't agree, then it exits you out of the installer. So if you just type yes and enter, the installation wizard will continue. At any point in the installation process, you can exit out of it, or you can go back. So if you type something wrong, you could type the word back and go backwards. And it gives you those instructions right down here in the last paragraph down here. So you can quit at any time, or you can go back. So let's see, I'll just hit enter so you can read this. It just tells you you need to make sure you have Java and what's going to happen, what's going to be installed. So the first thing it asks you is where is going to be your installation directory. It shows you what the default is right here. I'm going to give it my installation directory. And then just hit enter. And then it will confirm it. So that is the correct installation directory. Then it asks you about Apache Tomcat. So will it be installed? In the past, we've allowed sites to install or use the Apache that's distributed with common services, but we highly recommend not to use a different Apache Tomcat version than what we supply, because we have changed certain files to work with our application. So really, you should probably ignore option 2 and just only choose option 1. And then, so now we need the location of the Apache Tomcat. So I'm just going to my Excel document and cutting and pasting the name so I don't have any typos. So the runtime. And then next we need to know the server port value source. So the default, the Apache Tomcat will use the default, and that's the 8005 and the 8080, but we're going to put our own ports here. So I'm going to use option 2. And then it next prompts you to find out if you're going to use the secured way or the non-secured way. For this demo, I'm just going to do non-secure. And then at this point, it wants you to put in the port information. So 7708. And then the shutdown port is 7009. So next, the application database is going to be installed. And at this point, if this is a brand new installation, you would choose option 1. If this is an upgrade, because this is going to be the same process you're going to do for an upgrade of the web client. So once there's a 14.1.3 version, you're going to go through the same process, but you're going to choose option 2 to not write over your current database, just use the existing. So I'm going to choose option 1 here. And then it needs to know the location. And then after we put the location in, it needs to know the password. So my password will be, and then also, so there's 2 prompts here. So the first one is to initialize the database, and the second one is for the APP ID that I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to use the same password here. You can change it. Just write them down. If you do have two different ones, even if you have one, just write them down somewhere and keep them safe. And then here, changing the group and the owner dialog. So I'll change the owner file, and my owner is going to be VANTR141. And my group is going to be OMVS DGRP. So those are the few things that you need to know before you do the installation. And at any point, if you don't, just type exit or quit, sorry, exit, and then you'll just have to go back into the shell script when you have the information and start it again. So if something here in the summary was incorrect, I can always type the word back and it would go backwards. And I would keep typing the word back to go back to the specific panel where I made the error. But this all looks good. We don't print out the password here, just the APP username. If this all looks good, then you hit enter and it should start installing. And this usually just takes maybe a minute or so. It tries to tell you what's happening, but you can just watch the screen go through. Looks like it's at the post execution, so we're close to finish. And then so that's it, completed the installation. So now what it's displaying to you is letting you know it's completed. It's telling you the location. Because at this point, this information is very important. And so I would actually take a copy of it or a screenshot, because this line you're going to need to put into the Van Web UI procedure. It wants to know the Apache Tomcat directory path. This information can also be found in this summary file, Vantage summary report. So you can download this to your PC if you need to. If there ever was a problem, you could give this file to support online. And then there's also these 3 instructions at the very end that tell you what you need to do post installation. So you need to modify the started task procedure, the Van Web UI, with all the specific directories that you've created here. Here we give you the actual link, the URL link that you're going to put in a browser once you start it. And then just to remind you that you need to go in and log in. The very first thing you do when you bring up the started task, you need to log into the database to initialize it and to add that first host definition. So let me just get this copy. And this file right here, the review and print one for the installation summary, I'll just go in real quickly. I'll hit enter and then it should exit me out of the client, the installation wizard. Yeah, so I'm in the install directory and there's the report. So if I just do an O browse and the O just means OMBS. So here's the information, all the detailed information about the IP address, who installed it, your different paths. If you go over to the far right, you can see them. The server name, information, and then it also gives you the URL here too, and then your post instructions on what to do. So if you ever need to refer back to it, just go back in here and browse it or download it to your PC. So I'm done here. I'll exit out of OMBS. And let me go to, oops, I always spell product wrong. Oops. So this is my procedure, and I just copied the actual URL in here. So that's one thing you might do, because sometimes when you have all these started tasks, these Tomcat started tasks, you're not sure which URL goes which tasks. It just takes a little bit to find. I put my Java variables in this member. So this is actually where I would go and put my Java path, my Java path. So if I just, here's the Java variable. So I need to, on line 9, specify my Java path right here. The Catalina home is with the Apache Tomcat. Then we also need to, and this is all documented in the actual JCL. So I'm just pointing them out to you really quick for time purposes. Here's the other path you need to specify for the logs. So those are the only 3 things you really need to specify in the Java variables. And then we should be able to go start it because I have everything set up. So let's see. So here's my started task. Probably one thing you could do is just do a question mark and take a look at the sysout, the DDs here. Might still be coming up since my system's a little slow. Okay, so the first thing, once you bring it up, you're not going to probably see the startup complete until you actually bring up a browser and add the ID, the APP ID. Let me bring up a browser, hold on, to initialize the database. So let me put in the URL. And as you can see, it prompts you and tells you the database needs to be initialized. So the authenticating host is the Vantage DB. There's no other host here until you add Vantage host definitions. So I'm going to use the APP, and it needs to be in capital letters. I'll add my password and hit enter. And then it tells you it's been initialized. So you press OK. And then it should put you into the client. Oh, well, now I have to log in, sorry. So let me, now it should log you in the client. So the first thing you're going to see is this home space where we have, you can have favorite directories, factory directories, and learn more about Vantage. But the very first thing you need to do is on the top right where you see your ID is click on the down arrow and select host. And then add a host definition. So let's see. So this port happens to be the Vantage port. So these are the hosts that we're going to be connecting to. And I'm pretty sure, let me just make sure my Vantage port is 807. So let me just go in here and do a find on port. Oh, so it's 778. So I was wrong right there. So that'll get you a problem. So 778. And then at this point, you can use the client from here when you're logged on as the APP user, but if you ever want to authenticate to multiple Vantage started tasks, you can't do the global connection. So to log on to a host, you need to open up the folder here in the host section, check mark or the actual host that you want to connect to, and then click on the chains. And then add your mainframe ID and password. And then as you can see, it's trying to connect here. Once you get the chains, it means it is connected. Then you get the object tree. So at that point, you're logged in. And while you're in here, you can go into the settings down here on the left side here. And this is where you can add your analytics, the MOI information. You can add another profile. You can add your logos, and there's a few more other things that you can take a look at later, but those are the three things that you can change if you need to. And then you can log out by clicking the APP ID up at the top right and just click on the log out button. So at this point, anybody can log on. When you're logged on as the APP user, I do recommend adding all your different Vantage host definitions so you have them there. Let me go into one more thing here. We have just a few more minutes. So the post installation activities, if you can't find the URL, I've given you the place where you can go find it. When you add your host definition, use the APP ID and you add the URL at the top up here. And then as you can see, you authenticate to the Vantage DB, add your APP ID and password. Here I've given you a checklist of just things you can remember to do. I won't go through them again, but it's there for you to summarize and help you get through things. If you ever need help, it's the question mark with the circle, online and offline help. And the about at the bottom tells you what version of the web client you're on. So in case support ever needs to know or you need to know, you can check that and it'll tell you 14.1.2. If you do have a problem, if you don't get the logon page, to the left of the HTTP, there's a circle with an eye on it. So click on that and see if you get more information. Maybe something's being blocked. Maybe the Vantage web UI is being blocked. So that's one way to help debug. And then your post installation activities, make sure you add the mount points in your SysOne Parm Live. Make sure any user that's going to log on to Vantage has a home directory in their security profile. You can verify it by going into OMBS and typing a command similar to this with their home directory just to see if it's mounted. So here I have my mount point and my file system and then the size. So just something to check on. When you actually get this running at IPL time, start SAMS first, then the Van Web UI to shut it down. It's just a P for the Van Web UI. Well, I spelled that wrong. And then shut down Vantage with the modify SAMS shutdown. And that's it. So I just made it. So thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, Len will let you tell you where I can be available, or you can just email me anytime. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Maureen. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap. You see Maureen's email address up on the screen. That will also be a part of the replay that I post in the communities. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her or to me, or also the survey that's going to pop up here in a second also has this place for questions. Thank you very much for your time today, and have a wonderful rest of your week.